Robert, why should we listen to this episode today?
You should listen to this episode because I think you should write a book. And the reason I think you should write a book is because there's so many components to it in terms of personal development, learning, coaching, teaching. And at the end of the day, you have a resource that can fuel all sorts of other things in your life. And it seems like a daunting process, but you'll hear through my process that if you break it down into little parts, you can complete it. You just have to, start the process, stay focused, consistent, and to help yourself get some accountability. And it'll be worth it. It's all worth it at the end.
Hi, and welcome to Serenity Now, a place for entrepreneurs to ask questions, learn, get connected, and be inspired. Join us as we talk about all things business and the search for the ever-elusive Serenity Now in both business and personal life.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Serenity Now for Entrepreneurs. My name is Rita Kim. I'm one of your co-hosts, and I'm really excited about our episode today. But first, let me introduce you to our co-host, Candace. Welcome.
Hello, Rita.
Hey. And
Hi,
Peggy,
guys.
welcome. And now we're going to introduce our incredible guest, who we think is brilliant as well. His name is Robert Puharich. And I hopefully didn't ruin that or butcher the name, but Robert, you can fix it when I get it over to you. He is an educator, a coach, an editor, a marketer, a co-author, and I'm going to give you some really cool insight. He's our podcast editor as well. And the reason why Robert is on today, in spite of all the other things we could probably talk about, is we're going to talk about him co-authoring a book with Tetsuya Nakagawa, and the book is called Building Brilliance. And so I'd love to toss the mic over to Robert and give a good, solid, proper introduction. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here. It's been great working with you over a couple of years, and finally I made the cut. I'm on the big show. So I'm excited to work my way up here. But
we invited you a long time ago, Robert.
You're right. So yeah, I'm a long-term educator. I really enjoy helping people, and the love for helping people sort of led me down a path of starting to do some marketing and writing, and I ran into the right people at the right place, yourselves included. Tats, the co-author of my book, who runs a company, Castagra, had a podcast going that was very successful called the Specified Growth Podcast. And that podcast has over 320 episodes now, I believe, and it had a ton of information. So we started chatting, and my love of helping people and his love of helping people, we kind of came together and we started working together on the podcast, which has led me down this path where I'm here now.
Brilliant. Okay, so thanks so much, Robert. You didn't give too much bragging on all the other stuff and the other amazing stuff that you do, but maybe that's because you're also Canadian. So let's kind of learn a little bit more about what inspired you to write Building Brilliance. And I know there's a little bit more to the title. I'll let you share the rest of it. And, how did it begin? And, that's always a cool understanding to figure out how it started.
Yeah, well, the full title is Building Brilliance. So it's insights from construction leaders and entrepreneurs. And the reason is the Specified Growth Podcast is focused in the construction industry with also a focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. So Tats is an entrepreneur himself, and he's always looking to learn. He's a very curious person, so he gets the guests that help everybody learn and are good to learn. So when I started writing, it all started with a blog about money for teenagers. So I feel like the youth of today are not financially literate. I feel there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that sense. So I, rather than continuously talking about it, thought I'd do something about it. So I went and started a blog. Through that, I started to interview people who were, successful in different ways. And that sort of led me down a rabbit hole through entrepreneurship. And I was doing a whole bunch of entrepreneurial things myself through e-commerce and the digital world. And then I ended up connecting with Tats, and we decided to work on the podcast together. And then as I started listening to the podcast, I was like, there's some good information in here. Like there's years worth of content that can really help people. And I was learning a lot from it, and I thought other people could learn from it. And that's when Tats kind of came up with the idea, and he said, you like writing, you like the information. What do you think we put this into print? And, writing a book was on my bucket list. It's one of those things that I always wanted to do. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I knew it was going to happen, and just the stars aligned. And I thought, I have an opportunity to learn. I have an opportunity to connect with some really successful people who are nice. I know that because they've dealt with Tats. He only seems to deal with great people. And yeah, we just started and here we are. It's been a few years now in the making, but there's been so many great experiences and we're at the end. It's a big deal. Pretty happy about it.
Oh, that's awesome. So you said that you had like over 300 episodes of the podcast. So I'm guessing you didn't put 300 stories into the book. So how many did you choose and how did you choose them?
We selected 39 episodes and there's 40 guests because one of the episodes had partners on there. It was difficult and challenging. Sometimes there's just things that stand out for whatever reason. So as I listened through them, there were some things that really stood out to me, some different points or different views. So I recorded those, and then Tats over time had his views. And because there was the two of us, it was great because we were able to collaborate and understand, what did you get from this? And we could communicate, what did you think of this? And, filtering through them, we had to break it down. I mean, we couldn't keep all of them, but we ended up trying to be diverse in the sense that there were some podcasts about the same topic, so we couldn't select them all. And we did want some diversity in there. There were some that really stood out at us. Relationships were a big one because as I was writing the article, we really, and some of them wanted to get some good insights. So the ability to connect with people and the ability to get deeper insights also helped the articles. So a relationship was part of that. And some of them were just cool. Like, for example, Rita has an article in there and it was a live air, so I was able to hop on the call, ask questions live. As I was thinking about what I could write the article about, I was actually able to ask those questions in that interview, which made for an interesting article.
Well, now you're giving me an idea, Robert. We have a podcast. We know you. Just saying.
Well, the funny thing is this group started out, we were going to write a book, and then we ended up doing a podcast.
Yeah, we found the writing part of it wasn't happening. Like, everybody was too busy for that. As you know, we can hardly answer an email at times. So writing a book was just not going to happen. But the podcast has turned out to be, we're over 50 episodes now, I think. Robert, what I was going to ask you is, it sounds really interesting. And if I'm a reader, what would I get from your book? Why would I want to read it?
Tats and I sort of live by the idea of marginal gains and getting 1% better. Mm-hmm. So every day we try to get 1% better. And those 1% accumulate and they become, many percents over the course of time. And there's this concept by Sir David Brailsford. He took a cycling team and he believed in marginal gains and sort of doing the little things that accumulate to become the big things. And this book is based on that. So it's, if you take an insight from one person and an insight from another person and sort of put those insights together, by the end of the day or by the end of reading the article, you're going to learn something that's hopefully going to be actionable, going to contribute to whatever it is you're doing. And the nice thing is we took insights from people from different industries. So there's, insights from authors, CEOs in different industries, and taking the insight of how they operate isn't specific to that industry necessarily, but it can help in operations in another area. So there's a few that stand out. For example, the CEO of Danby, Jim Still, is very, very simple in everything he does. And that simplicity carries over to everywhere. And you'd think he's super busy and he has all these things going on and he's a huge organization, but the simplicity is something to learn from it. And I learned a lot from that. Like, a concept as simple as he responds to every email, but a lot of them are not more than one sentence. He believes that responding to every email is more important than not responding, but you don't need to pour 5 minutes into every email. It can be very simple, which I think is good because often, when writing an email, you're thinking about the way it sounds and how are they going to interpret it. His point is I'd rather respond than not respond.
That. Mm-hmm.
I really like that too. It's so many times people don't respond to emails.
I appreciate anyone who does respond. We're the worst with Robert.
We are.
No comment.
I don't know why
We just
Robert
don't
stays
get
with
how
us
he's so nice to us.
I really that 1% better and marginal gains. I think that's fantastic. And so I would definitely want to go ahead and read this book. So, Robert, if you look back, I think it's been a few years now on this process of writing and building and working through this book. What are some lessons that you have learned or tips that you can share, perhaps?
I think with anything else, it's kind of the same idea, but it gets lost is consistency. It's not breaking consistency. So like having a book and looking at the final project, it's completely overwhelming. And you have to start somewhere. And the hardest part of starting and the second hardest part is staying consistent. And when it comes to things, if you implement something like a marginal gain, every time I wrote an article or every time I read an article, I became 1% better. I learned that information and I tried to apply it. So it was sort of applying what I was preaching at the same time. But just having goals and actually sticking to those goals is everything when writing a book. Because if you're looking at 400 pages later, it's hard to get past page 10. But if you're looking at 10 pages for the week, that can be accomplished. So 10 pages a week adds up, consistent. Don't become overwhelmed. Just understand that it will get there. Of course, it's not a fast process, but 2 years, as we discussed earlier, goes super fast. So you just need to start and need to stay consistent.
It is an overwhelming process when you think about it, isn't it?
I really love how you implemented the learning of the 1% better as you were writing the book. And you're right. Tasks such as writing a book or sometimes even just getting into the office chair can be overwhelming. And just like you said, step one is starting. And then step two, just being consistent. And so showing up and continuing that process. I'm getting more excited about reading this.
And I'll add to that, Rita. I think resiliency is a big part of it. I mean, there's plenty of days I didn't want to do it. I could go into my situation. I don't want to get into the gist of it, but I have 3 kids that are like 5 and under. One was born during the process. Wow. One had some medical issues during the process. All the other things that go on with life. Mm-hmm. So there are days you don't want to do it. I mean, some of the chapters were written from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. And so it's the resilience. It's overcoming what you're dealing with and sort of just staying focused. Maybe resilience isn't the right word, but the focus is the right word. It's knowing what you have to do and figuring out when you're going to do it, whatever works for you. If it's at lunchtime, if it's, before dinner, just finding a time to get that goal done for the day or for the week. We can all do it. It's just, we have to figure out a way that works.
It's a bit of a solitary process too, right? So you're the one who has to drive it. You're the one who has to execute on it. And you're the one who has to keep the ball rolling. So it does require a lot of self-motivation and, like you say, planning. Tenacity. Yeah, there's a good
tenacity.
Word. Yeah, good for you, Robert.
And I will say that a co-author helps. I have a co-author. We did check in every Saturday. So I knew that by Saturday I had to present something.
Well, that's good.
So there were definitely times where Friday night wasn't a night. It was a Friday. I was up all night kind of writing and doing stuff, knowing that I had a meeting at 7:30 in the morning. And he didn't need to know that, but I got my stuff done. And that accountability piece was there, and it definitely helped.
Oh, that's a good point. Accountability.
You're describing a lot of things as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, showing up, consistency, applying learnings. And I like the word resilience and focus and tenacity. And a lot of the times, like you said, when you have an accountability partner, whether it's a partner in your own firm or external partners or even clients or so on, it's a lot of us do exactly what you just described. The meeting Saturday morning at 7:30, guess what's happening Friday night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing like
work.
Deadlines, eh, Candace?
Love it.
Yeah, deadlines. And I definitely learned a lot about taking a big project and breaking it into small pieces and just do the next piece. Mm-hmm. Just do the next piece. And which is kind of, I feel like what you just described is don't worry about the big project. Yeah. Just what's the next
Did you
piece?
ever run into any points where your creativity sort of failed you, where you had, I don't want to say writer's blocks, because apparently that doesn't exist, but just times when writing was harder?
Yeah, there were times where it's hard, like in the middle of the book. There was a period where we went, we were doing extended times to write, and we kind of cut it down to shorter periods because it was just, as you get more comfortable, things become easier. But then it doesn't mean that you have more time in the day. So then there were times where, again, it'd become a little overwhelming and you'd start thinking like, oh no, I have to do this, but what am I going to do? And then, so there's strategies that I sort of came up with. Like I'd go through the notes again. I would look at the big picture. So I'd take a step out and say, okay, as a third party to this interview, what am I taking out of this? Because what I'm taking out of it is what I'm hoping somebody else will take out of it. So how can I express that through my words, not necessarily the words of the two people in the interview?
That's good.
So it's sort of, not getting caught up in the information. Sometimes the information didn't really apply to me, or I didn't see how it applied to me. But again, the concepts were there. So how do I take those concepts and apply them to what I'm doing or what I will be doing? Just understanding when you hit a block rather than shutting down, strategizing, finding ways to get through it or around it seemed to work.
So don't keep hitting your head on the wall, find a different wall.
Yeah, it's easy to shut down and say, not tonight. And I found that if I said not tonight, then tomorrow wasn't any better. Like I didn't feel like starting again tomorrow. But if I said tonight, I will find the big concept here and I'll write it down. Then tomorrow I can write about that big concept.
That's great. Wow, you get great self-management.
if I didn't, it stalled. Like there was nobody that was going to come in and save me.
Right.
So I had to understand that, we had the goal and it was going to be me that got around that. I could ask for advice and I could ask for help, but at the end of the day, I still have to write it.
Wow, good story.
I love that because we all stall. And I really like how you said, well, if I say no today, or maybe I take a break today, then tomorrow's not going to be any better. But just getting one piece of it or sorting out one idea of it versus just saying I have to do all of it. Again, it helped you move past that. You almost sound like a coach. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you are a coach, right?
It's that concept of recalibrating, right? If you run into a big block like that, you have to recalibrate. You have to do something a little different. You can't continue to do the same thing and expect a different result.
Yeah. And when you believe in the marginal gains, it goes back to, okay, what did I gain today? So if you gain that one thing and do that one thing, you can go to bed feeling good and say, okay, I did this one thing. If I'm going to bed saying I shut down today, then I don't necessarily feel better about myself. And doesn't make, as I mentioned, doesn't make the next day better. Doesn't make me feel good waking up. It's kind of like when you stress eat at night and you don't wake up feeling great because you ate the night before. It's the same idea. If you shut down the night before.
We've never done that. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're a better woman than I, Rita.
No, it's a perfect analogy. It's a perfect analogy. It's completely true because then you get into that cycle, right? Oh, I didn't do it. Oh, I suck. Oh, I'm a failure. Oh, why am I doing this? Oh, just maybe I should just give up. You can just completely go down that whole cycle. But like you said, you worked on one piece of it and then you can feel good when you go to bed.
I like that. I think you can apply that anywhere. That's a really good principle.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that's what I was going to say is it actually started for me when I was weight training, because when I was young, I really enjoyed weight training. And weight training is one of those things where you're sore, you're tired, you have every reason not to go. But if you don't go that first day, it's a lot easier not to go the second and third days. So you have to get that first day out of the way so that the second and third don't fall as well. And again, that principle, it applies in my life, but I could see how it applies.
It definitely applies to my going to exercise class. If I'm afraid not to go. At my age, if you don't go, you hurt so much. So it's more the fear of the pain if I don't go than the fear of the pain if I do go.
So I have one other question about if one of our listeners is thinking about starting a book, or perhaps the three ladies here and you're in this podcast are thinking about it. Where do we start? Anyways, like how do you approach? This is a daunting thing and I love your step-by-step process, but how do you even start? Because there's so many pieces to the puzzle, and costs, the timing, getting an author, finding an editor or a formatter, or and maybe is better.
I think I learned from a wise person one time, have an end goal. So what's the end goal, right, Rita? Sound familiar? So,
I love how you put it back.
It's the end goal. I knew I wanted to hold the book in my hand, and that's what sort of pulled me. And then I knew I want to help people, and I knew I want to learn. So if you combine those three things, that's the first thing. So now you have a goal and a way to do it. Now, what is it going to be about? Usually the best way is to do, what you already know or what you already have access to. So if you have a podcast, you have information, or if you've been in a business for a long time, you have lots of information. It's getting that information laid out, having that plan, and then just starting. Once you have that plan and you have that sort of outline, it's a lot easier than just showing up and saying, I want to write a book. You have to want something really bad and know how you want to get to the end of it.
Okay, so I think this is the time we come to our quick fire, even though I had a million more questions for Robert. If we can go around and maybe we'll start with Candace, just a key takeaway or aha moment or something, one last final question to Robert.
I think the thing that resonated with me the most today is that if you can't do the whole thing, just do the one thing. Figure out what you can do and get it done, the 1%, however you want to refer to it, because it gets you that much closer to the end goal. Even if you don't get everything done every day as much as you want to, at least you're a little bit closer.
Yeah, I like that too. I think that's really important for people to break things down to manageable tasks. And the 1% idea, it's very fulfilling to know you've 1% better every day. I think that's great. I also like the analogy to the gym, but I think some people might not like the analogy to the gym.
I'm going to just echo what my Serenity sisters have said. I really liked the 1%, the marginal gains. And I think there were some really great comments you had earlier as well. Like the hardest part is just starting. And so just start and you might not have everything laid out, but just start and then being consistent. I think if we can show up and be consistent and a little bit every day, huge gains. Robert, I'm going to toss it back to you. If there's something you wanted to share or didn't get a chance to, or one last good piece of advice, please take
just
it
the
away.
advice is, with the book, the chances of becoming a bestseller are not very high. It's not sort of the goal, but the goal is to help the people that you can help. But I think from a business perspective, entrepreneur perspective, there's also more you can do with the book. So the book is a good goal because once you have that book, now you have more content. You have more content for your social media. You have more content for your business. You have credibility. There's all sorts of things that come with the book and completing a book, which makes it even more valuable. So if someone's thinking of starting a book, the book is great, but just think of all that can come with it. The people you'll meet, the process you'll learn, the information you'll gain. And then you can fuel your content in whichever way you want to take it. And content's the way of the future. You can put it into podcasts, you can put it into articles, you can put it into posts. So it's one way of building content. It's one way of learning. It's one way of teaching. There's just so many aspects that go with it. But again, it all starts with one page. It all starts with an introduction. And it all starts with, maybe an accountability partner or somebody to hold you somewhat accountable in what you really want.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Robert, for joining us today. If people want to get a hold of the book, what we'll do is probably put some links down on the bottom of the episode as well. And Robert, you'll be able to give us all that information later as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you my Twitter and my email. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to help out.
Okay. Oh, so you might be available for other writing projects is what I just heard.
Help other people out, yes.
We're already going to be attacking him first. So you guys all are behind us. Okay. So just want to say thank you again, Robert, Candace, Peggy. Hoping that this episode has given some insights on the journey of authoring or co-authoring a book and just some really cool tips, just not just for writing a book, but in real life, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. And so we hope that if this episode has helped you, please do share it. And we hope that this can perhaps give you some serenity now. Thank you, guys.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and picked up some good tips and best practices that would benefit your entrepreneurial journey. Remember, none of the content in this podcast should be relied upon as standard legal or business advice. Always consult a professional for your specific business. You may know someone who could benefit from this podcast. Please share it with your business community, and perhaps it can give an entrepreneur you know some serenity now.